Eric says it without theatrics, just a quiet admission that lands like a gavel. His strength is fading, the good days are fewer, and he will not leave Forrester to be diced into pieces by divided hearts. His will is drafted, his shares set to transfer if and only if the family stands as one, and that means Ridge must stop living between yes and no, stop mixing yesterday with tomorrow, stop keeping two futures on the table as if time won't pull the cloth. The clause is blunt, unity or nothing. And it forces every person in the room to measure what they want against what Eric is asking for as a final act of stewardship. Ridge hears it and goes still because it isn't just business, it's the weight of a father's last request hanging over years of hesitation. Brooke recognizes the trap and the test baked into the same sentence. Taylor hears a door opening if Ridge will only step through. Steffi pictures a clean line to the family she's always tried to glue back together. And in the middle of it, the company, this living organism they've all bled for, holds its breath while Eric asks for alignment, not applause. Brooke moves first, surprising everyone by cutting every angle off the board. She asks Eric to remove her name from any benefit, any trust, any contingency that would enrich her if he's gone. She tells him she refuses to be the excuse anyone uses to call her a fortune hunter and refuses to let money stain whatever Ridge decides, and she says it with a level gaze that makes lawyers glance at each other and makes Eric swallow, because it is generous and it is also a surgical way to pull the poison from the narrative. He thanks her with a look that says he hates that this is necessary and loves her for doing it anyway. But Brooke is not finished. She tells everyone she is stepping back while Ridge decides, then quietly does the opposite of stepping back. In private, she records a legacy video, a confession disguised as farewell, a message to Ridge and the city that has been their stage. If he cannot give her a clear answer, if he cannot choose her without hedging, she will leave Los Angeles for good. No more almosts, no more someday, no more waiting by the phone in a house that remembers every time he walked out. The video isn't a suicide note, it's a boundary drawn in permanent ink, and it is also something else, a calculated piece of theater designed to force a truth to the surface without spilling her dignity in the street. She intends it as leverage he will never have to see, a hammer sealed in a box, a thing to be used only if the wobble returns and devours her again. She stores it with a single confidant and plans to let it rot in the cloud because surely he will step toward her or away from her without being shoved. The city spins in its usual orbit until the same morning Taylor calls a family gathering and announces that she and Ridge plan to get engaged again, low-key, private, with Eric's blessing if he'll give it, with the family welcomed if they can handle joy without turning it into a referendum. Taylor's voice doesn't shake, and Ridge stands beside her with the awkward, stubborn calm of a man trying to honor a decision while his chest remembers 1,000 other nights. Steffi glows, Thomas nods like a man who wants to believe that rehabilitation includes new habits, and the Forresters treat the news like a step toward the unity Eric demanded. The Logans brace themselves, because no announcement in this family ever comes without echoes. Then the video detonates. It leaks online an hour after Taylor's statement, prefaced by a caption that frames it as Brooke's secret ultimatum, complete with a timestamp that makes it look like she prepared it as a grenade to roll under the table the moment Taylor spoke. The clip is tight, the audio clean, Brooke's face steady as she says she will leave the city forever if Ridge cannot give her certainty, says she won't be the woman who waits at gates and wakes up alone, says she'd rather rebuild her life somewhere no one knows the word Forrester than spend one more year pretending she can survive indecision without becoming someone she doesn't recognize. She never mentions money, never mentions Eric's will, never attacks Taylor. She just lays out a line and tells the man she loves to step over it or let her go. The reaction is immediate and vicious. Social feeds light up with split-screen GIFs and quick takes, talk shows do emergency segments, industry blogs call it the most Brooke move imaginable, romantic blackmail or final clarity depending on who you ask. Publicists slam phones, reporters descend on both homes, and the board's legal team calls Eric to warn him that perception can tank a brand faster than a bad quarter. Taylor's supporters accuse Brooke of hijacking a happy moment. Brooke's supporters clap back that a woman is allowed to demand certainty after decades of being rerouted at the altar of family unity. The only person who knows what the video really is, a private pressure test Brooke never planned to air. Watches the chaos spread and feels his stomach turn. For the first 10 hours everyone assumes the leak is Brooke's doing, a Hail Mary masked as heartbreak. Ridge is crushed and furious in the way only he can be, loving the woman and hating the spectacle, angry at the timing, haunted by the content. Taylor feels ambushed, hurt not just on her own behalf but on her children's. Steffi calls it proof of Brooke's addiction to drama. Katie defends her sister without having seen the file before it blew up. Donna begs everyone to breathe. Eric calls for a ceasefire and nearly collapses trying to enforce it. Seeing the stress smear his face scares them all into silence long enough for the forensic truth to emerge. Because the twist slinks in from a direction they didn't guard, the leak didn't come from Brooke's inner circle or Ridge's or Taylor's. It came through a burner routed through a spoofed PR contact and bounced off a device registered to a coffee shop near Il Giardino. The digital fingerprints, thin and oily, point to someone who thrives on chaos for sport, Sheila Carter. She didn't just forward a link, she packaged it, wrote the caption, timed the release to land like a slap across Taylor's announcement, and then sat back to watch Forrester and Logan tear strips off each other while the city called it karma. She understood the game because she's played it longer than any of them. You don't destroy a family by emptying a bank account, you destroy it by turning trust into a question mark. The video was dynamite because it was honest and unseen, and honest unseen things do the most damage when ripped into daylight at the worst possible moment. When the forensics land on Ridge's desk and he sees Sheila's name glint beneath the digital soot, something in him steadies, the anger at Brooke. At the optics, at the timing, drains out and leaves behind a picture that refuses to blur. Brooke didn't ask for a slice of Eric's empire, she cut herself out of it. She didn't threaten to ruin Taylor's happiness, she promised to remove herself from the story if he couldn't speak with a full heart. The video wasn't a bomb, it was a line in the sand. A plea for certainty from a woman who has been the fallback and the first choice so many times the difference has started to poison her. What she wants isn't a check or a ring tossed like a bribe, it is a yes that doesn't tremble. Ridge sits alone in his office and hears Eric's condition echo, unity or nothing, and realizes unity isn't something you manufacture by sheer force of announcements, it's something you create when the people who love you stop being asked to live on crumbs while you decide which table you're sitting at. He sees Brooke standing on the edge of a plane ramp because she would rather jump than be pushed again. He sees Taylor, strong and clear after fighting for her life, refusing to play second to nostalgia. He sees himself, the fulcrum who keeps pretending the seesaw is balance, and he understands that Eric's clause was never about spreadsheets, it was about a son who confuses delay with diplomacy. Outside, the storm feeds itself. Paparazzi camp at the gate, influencers try to livestream tears they haven't earned, a morning show invites a body language expert to analyze Brooke's eyes frame by frame, and a shareholder calls Wyatt to ask whether an emotional contagion clause in the bylaws could let them move Ridge out of the CEO chair until this blows over. In the design room, the team attempts to work while a television whispers headlines, and in Eric's den, the patriarch watches his family bend under a gust he warned them was coming. Brooke vanishes the way only someone famous and stubborn can, no warning, no last coffee, just a driver, a carry-on, an alias on a ticket, and a straight line to LAX. She books a last flight on a carrier with no direct ties to anyone who might tip the press, chooses a destination that isn't the obvious retreat, signs the hotel under a name she once used in Paris when she needed to breathe. She turns her phone off to everything except a single emergency contact and writes a message to Eric that she will always love him for trying to protect them from themselves. Then she takes a seat near a gate filled with strangers who have no idea their boarding group is part of a cliffhanger half of Los Angeles is arguing about in real time. Taylor holds her ground with a calm that's more flint than water. She doesn't retract the engagement plan because she refuses to let Sheila's chaos dictate her life, but she doesn't spike the ball either. She tells Steffi and Thomas she will not compete with a plane's wheels leaving a runway, that if Ridge needs to chase closure to find his yes, she will rise or fall on what truth brings back. It isn't martyrdom, it's a line of her own. She'll marry a man who gets on one plane and off the stairway he's been running up and down for years. Steffi, furious and protective, calls for scorched earth and lawyers. Thomas, wiser than he used to be, says sometimes the only move is to let the man be a man and see if he chooses the version of himself you can live with. Eric orders everyone to stop talking to cameras, To stop feeding the algorithm that eats reputations, he calls Ridge and says the clause stands but that the definition of unity cannot be a trick of optics, that he wants a family that can sit at the same table without measuring victories by who sits where. He tells his son to go where his heart is loudest and to come back with an answer that lets the rest of them sleep. Ridge listens, then moves. He doesn't take a driver, he doesn't call security, he grabs his keys and a jacket and ignores the calls stacking in his voicemail. The city funnels him toward the airport in a ribbon of brake lights and regret. At a red light he almost turns around because endings are easier to survive when you don't watch them, but he floors it when the light dies and chooses the lane that leads to arrivals, then departures, then the parking that always costs more than it should. He runs through a terminal that smells like coffee and second chances, checks the board, sees a flight that matches the one Donna guessed Brooke might take, tells himself he has time, tells himself he doesn't, and follows a thread of instinct through the noise. At security he hits a wall named procedure, he flashes a name that opens doors everywhere else and gets a polite shake of the head. He calls in a favor from a manager who once wore a Forester gown at her wedding and gets walked to the other side of a rope with a warning that she cannot do this again. The gate is at the far end, the kind that makes you see your life in glass reflections as you jog. An announcement, final boarding, cracks the hallway open and shoves his heart into his throat. He gets there as the agent scans the last 3 tickets and closes the lane. Beyond the glass he sees the jet bridge curving like a decision you can't reverse. He scans the seating area and finds her, not in sunglasses and a hat but sitting straight with her hands folded over her passport, looking at the runway the way people do when they're daring themselves not to cry. He doesn't shout her name because spectacle is the thing that keeps breaking them. He says it the way you say a prayer, low and certain, and she turns because she knows the sound of him even when she wishes she didn't. Her first look is defense, then anger, then a flicker of hope she crushes because she refuses to be whiplashed one more time. He tells her the video wasn't a betrayal of Taylor or a stunt for Eric's will, it was the truth he should have seen without being handed a screen. He tells her Sheila did this and he is sorry he let the ugliness of the leak distract him from the honesty of the message. He says he needs to stop managing everyone's expectations and start choosing the life he can look at in the mirror. She says she isn't a layover on the way to anything. He says he knows. She asks if he came to stop her or to bless her goodbye. He says he came to end the noise. To give her an answer that doesn't wobble. To stop being the man who keeps both doors ajar because he's afraid of the draft when one slams shut. The agent announces that the gate will close in 1 minute. The jet bridge hums. A child laughs because not everything in the world is a cliff. Brooke tells him that if he is about to ask her to wait while he returns to reassure Taylor, the answer is no. He says he isn't asking for time, he's spending it. He says Eric asked for unity and he finally understands that unity means one story told without footnotes. He says if she walks on that plane he will not chase her again, not because he doesn't love her but because her decision deserves respect. He says if she stays, he will stand in front of cameras and families and say what he should have said years ago, that the back and forth ends today. She studies him with the kind of scrutiny that has ruined 1,000 liars. She is not a girl and this is not a movie. She asks him if Taylor knows he's here. He says Taylor told him to choose and that she will live with the truth. He says he will face the fallout without blaming anyone else, without calling it timing or fate. He says if the answer she wants is yes, she has it, and if the answer she needs is proof, she'll have it when they walk out of this terminal and into the storm. The agent reaches for the door, the last passenger disappears into the tunnel. Brooke looks at the glass where the plane's nose seems to hold its breath. She looks back at the man who has been the most beautiful miracle and the most exhausting habit of her life. She thinks of Eric's hands on hers, of Taylor's victory feeling like a wake, of Sheila's laugh when chaos blooms. She thinks of the video she recorded for her eyes alone, the promise to pick herself if he didn't pick her. She stands, and the gate crew tenses because people do stupid things at airports when they are in love. She picks up her carry-on and steps toward him with the calm of someone who has finally set her own terms. Whether she hands over her boarding pass or her heart is the next beat of the story, and as she comes to a stop in front of him, the airport becomes the only room that matters. Outside, cameras will be waiting, families will be bracing, Eric's claws will be on every tongue, and Sheila will be somewhere smiling at the storm she tried to own. Inside, Ridge and Brooke stand on the line between departure and arrival, and the decision that will define unity, love, and the company built on both is no longer a puzzle of wills and wills, but a yes or a no spoken without a tremor.